Imagine, just for a second, a world where the absolute ultimate luxury isn't a sports car.
Right.
It's not some massive mansion in the hills or a private jet.
Hmm.
It is actually a living, breathing animal, like a pigeon or a horse or even just a spider.
Or spider.
And in this exact same world, the ultimate crime, like a crime that gets you executed right on the spot without a trial, is just being a machine that has the audacity to want to live.
It's such a bleak setup.
It really is. So today, we are stepping right into the dark. We are going on this deeply atmospheric, totally audio-only exploration of Philip K. Dick's absolute masterpiece, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yes, but we need to lay some ground rules first.
Oh, absolutely.
We are completely leaving the visual legacy of Ridley Scott's Blade Runner at the door. There are no neon-soaked streets here, no giant holographic advertisement.
Right, none of that visual spectacle.
Exactly. Our focus for this deep dive is on the haunting 2014 BBC Radio 4 adaptation. It was brought to life by Jonathan Holloway and directed by Sasha Yevtushenko. And the brilliance of this specific production is, it's sensory deprivation.
That's a great way to put it.
Because by forcing you to experience this entire universe just through sound, the production essentially traps you. You are locked inside this absolute psychological and spiritual void of a post-war, highly mechanized world.
Yeah, because the neon lights of cyberpunk cinema, they kind of distract us, right? They distract us with how cool the future looks.
They absolutely do.
But this audio drama strips all of that away and asks us, well, how hollow does the future sound?
And the casting does so much heavy lifting to establish that hollow. I mean, you have James Purefoy playing Rick Deckard.
Oh, he is so good in this.
And Jessica Raine as Rachel Rosen. And their performances are just incredibly nuanced. They are steeped in this inescapable, bone-deep weariness.
So our mission today is really to explore how Yevtushenko and Holloway use dialogue and dead air and Foley work and this very deliberate, suffocating pacing to pull you, the listener, right into Deckard's deteriorating mind.
But to truly understand the claustrophobia of this story, I think we first need to establish the ground rules of the reality these characters live in, because the lore drops early, and man, it is bleak.
Bleak is an understatement. So Earth has survived this devastating global war, but just barely. The atmosphere is totally poisoned by radioactive dust.
Right, the dust is everywhere.
And the birds, the owls and sparrows, they were the very first things to fall out of the sky. The air is literally toxic to human cognition.
Which means anyone with the genetic and financial means has completely abandoned the planet. They've gone to off-world colonies, mostly on Mars.
Leaving behind essentially a global graveyard.
Exactly. The Earth that remains is just inhabited by the people who are left behind. And to incentivize that massive, dangerous migration to Mars, the governing bodies offered immigrants this very specific, highly controversial reward.
The custom-built Nexus 6 androids.
Yes. These are highly sophisticated, biologically engineered machines. To the naked eye, they are completely indistinguishable from human beings, and they are given to the colonists to be used as slave labor in a hostile alien environment.
And Rick Deckard, our protagonist, is one of the men left behind in the radioactive dust of San Francisco. He didn't emigrate. He is a bounty hunter for the local police department.
His job title is officially bounty hunter, but his mandate is to track down and, quote, retire these machines.
Which is such a sanitized, bureaucratic euphemism for assassinate.
Oh, totally. He's an executioner. And his current job is to hunt down 6 of these highly advanced Nexus 6 androids that have mutinied. They slaughtered their human overseers on Mars and fled back to Earth seeking anonymity.
And Deckard gets paid a bounty for every machine he destroys, $1,000 a head. But what is the driving force behind all this bloodshed? Why is he doing this?
This is the crazy part. He wants to buy a real biological animal.
Right. To replace the malfunctioning, totally fake, artificial electric sheep that is currently grazing on the roof of his apartment building.
Which is a setup that immediately upends everything we expect from a futuristic noir thriller. Because it establishes that the core economy of this world is not based on data.
Right. Or gold, or territorial control.
Exactly. It is an entirely spiritual economy. Because in a civilization that has completely annihilated its natural environment, the only currency that actually matters is empathy. Or, at least the performance of empathy.
I am so glad you used the word performance. Because that is precisely what makes the audio storytelling format of this adaptation so deviously effective.
Oh, absolutely.
When you are listening to this in the dark with headphones on, you're completely at the mercy of the voices. You can't, like, look at an actor's micro-expression.
You can't watch their eyes dart away if they're lying.
Right. You just have the timbre of their voice,
Right.
or a slight hesitation in their breath, or that little bit of vocal fry at the end of a sentence.
You are forced to rely purely on emotional resonance to determine who is telling the truth.
And that makes you, the listener, incredibly susceptible to the exact same empathy tricks that are being weaponized against Rick Deckard.
The listener is placed in the exact same epistemological crisis as the protagonist. You are trapped in the sensory deprivation of the medium, just like Deckard is trapped in the spiritual deprivation of his dying planet.
It's so true. Every conversation feels like an interrogation. And not just for the characters, but for us. We are constantly asking ourselves, is that emotion genuine, or is it simulated?
So to truly grasp the stakes of Deckard's hunt, I think we have to look really closely at what he is trying to purchase with this blood money.
The animal.
Yes, this desperate, almost pathetic quest for a biological pet is the window into the profound spiritual emptiness of this society. Take his visit to the animal dealership early in the drama.
Right. He has just been promised $5,000 for this new, incredibly dangerous bounty contract. And the very first thing he does isn't, upgrade his weaponry.
Or fortify his apartment.
No. He goes shopping for a pet. He asks about a Makatua monkey from the Gambia.
And the soundscape in that dealership scene is just brilliant. You hear the background noises of biological life, squawks, rustling cages, the breathing of actual creatures.
It's such a stark contrast to the sterile, mechanical hum of the rest of the city.
Deckard is so anxious here. He is practically begging for reassurance that the monkey is healthy and hasn't been genetically deformed by the radioactive fallout.
The dealer's pitch is what fundamentally defines the culture of this world. He tells Deckard that he isn't just buying a primate. He is buying, quote, the spiritual peace that will accompany living with him or her. The animal will repair your life.
Repair your life. That is such a heavy, loaded phrase. It implies that Deckard is fundamentally broken.
And Deckard knows it. Right now, he lives in a state of perpetual humiliation. I mean, he pays a maintenance man who actually has to masquerade as a fake veterinarian in a branded van to come to his roof and fix the wiring in his electric sheep.
He is terrified. His neighbors will find out his animal is a machine.
The societal shame of owning a fake animal is palpable. He even says at one point that electric animals are more painful to own than having nothing at all.
Because looking at that sheep is a constant mocking reminder of his own spiritual poverty. Caring for a fragile, living creature has become the only acceptable way to prove you still possess a soul.
Because humanity killed nature. They dropped the bombs. They poisoned the atmosphere.
Therefore, protecting the microscopic remnants of that nature has been elevated to, essentially, a state-mandated religion. It's the ultimate mechanism for absolution. By tending to an animal, you signal to society, and more importantly to yourself, that you haven't become a monster.
You are proving your humanity through your capacity to nurture. But the thing is, the state doesn't just take your word for it. They enforce this religion of empathy through the Voigtkampf test.
The infamous Voigtkampf test.
Right, the tool Deckard uses to identify androids. And this is really vital to understand. The Voigtkampf is not a standard Turing test. It doesn't ask the subject to solve a complex math problem or write a sonnet.
It isn't testing for intelligence at all.
Exactly. It tests for involuntary biological empathy.
It's basically an invasive physiological exam. It measures pupil dilation, heart rate, skin flush, capillary reaction. It is searching for the body's automatic, unthinking reaction to cruelty.
The designers of the test know that a highly advanced AI can totally fake a verbal response. But they hypothesize that a machine cannot manufacture the involuntary biological flinch of genuine empathy.
And the questions Deckard asks are entirely centered on the abuse of animals.
And they are incredibly specific and bizarre. He asks things like, you are given a calfskin wallet on your birthday. How do you react?
Or you're reading a book and someone drops a live lobster into boiling water.
Or you discover a wasp crawling on your arm. And the legally required human response to these scenarios is deep physiological revulsion. Your pupils must dilate in horror. Your skin must flush.
The core premise here is that an android, regardless of its processing power or its vast vocabulary, cannot genuinely feel the suffering of a lesser creature. They can understand the concept intellectually, sure.
They know they're supposed to say, oh, that's terrible.
Right, but their capillaries won't dilate. Their autonomic nervous system won't betray them because they don't have one.
But wait, hold on. I'm getting stuck on a massive, glaring double standard here. Let's really look at the hypocrisy of this society. We have humans who will casually drop $5,000 on a monkey to achieve spiritual peace. They will practically fall to their knees and worship a spider.
Yeah.
But these exact same people will completely dehumanize a sentient, thinking, feeling, pleading android, a being that looks exactly like them and speaks their language, and they will shoot it in the back of the head for $1,000. How does society justify that? Isn't their entire concept of empathy completely arbitrary and performative?
Oh, that glaring hypocrisy is the absolute philosophical engine of Philip K. Dick's entire narrative. The humans in this story have successfully weaponized empathy.
Weaponized it? Why?
They have legally and culturally defined empathy in this incredibly narrow way that conveniently excludes the exact beings they rely on for slave labor. I mean, think about it. If you, as a society, acknowledge that an android possesses a soul or feelings or a genuine desire to live, you can no longer justify chaining them to a mining colony on Mars.
You would have to admit you were running a cosmic slave trade.
Exactly. So they draw an impenetrable line in the sand. Empathy for a wasp. That proves you are human. Empathy for a machine that weeps and bleeds. That is prohibited and honestly potentially treasonous.
It is chilling because it maps so perfectly onto our modern anxieties regarding emotional detachment and technology.
Yeah.
I mean, we are currently living in an era where we increasingly outsource our connections to algorithms.
I really do.
We have people forming deep, genuine emotional attachments to AI chatbots, virtual companions, algorithmic influencers. If we begin to treat our machines with the empathy we usually reserve for living beings, do we lose our own spiritual peace?
Or, conversely, by treating these hyper-realistic digital entities as disposable objects, are we mechanizing our own hearts just to survive the modern world?
The parallels to Chesterton's warnings about mechanized modernity are just profound here. Chesterton feared that as our tools became more sophisticated and human-like, we would inadvertently become more like tools.
And we already see this in how we interact digitally. Treating people as interchangeable data points on dating apps, ghosting them without a second thought, viewing human relationships through the lens of consumer disposability.
In Deckard's world, the biological humans are the ones acting incredibly robotic. They go through the rigorous, state-mandated motions of empathy like buying the animal, reciting the correct emotional responses, without actually feeling the moral weight of their own cruelty.
And that precise vulnerability, that selective, highly mechanical human empathy, is exactly what the Rosen Corporation decides to exploit.
Ah, yes, the Rosen Corporation.
They are the mega entity that manufactures these androids, and their intervention completely shatters Deckard's worldview. He gets called up to their headquarters in Seattle because the police department is terrified.
Right. They suspect the new Nexus 6 models are so advanced that the Voight-Kampff test might simply bounce right off them.
And the audio shift in this sequence is just remarkable. We leave the gritty, echoing, rain-slicked streets of San Francisco. Deckard's hover car lands on the roof, and suddenly we are enveloped in the plush, sterile, acoustically perfect environment of the Rosen corporate headquarters.
The background noise just vanishes.
It does. The silence itself is oppressive. It's thick with corporate wealth and absolute control, and that's when he is greeted by a young woman named Rachel Rosen.
And Jessica Raine's performance as Rachel is a masterclass in vocal manipulation.
Yeah.
She speaks with this calculated innocence. Her voice is soft, breathy, slightly hesitant. She introduces herself as the niece of Eldon Rosen, the patriarch of the corporation.
And immediately, Eldon and Rachel put Deckard through an aggressive psychological ringer. They challenge the validity of the police department's methods, and they demand that Deckard demonstrate the Voight-Kampff test on Rachel herself.
It is a phenomenal power play. They are forcing the state's executioner to justify his methods in the house of the creator.
So Deckard hooks her up to the machine, attaches the adhesive nodes to her face, and begins the interrogation.
He starts throwing these bizarre scenarios at her. A naked woman on a bearskin rug, an abortion, a boiling lobster. And halfway through the test, the audio pacing subtly shifts. Deckard's voice tightens. He realizes something is profoundly wrong.
Her emotional responses are completely flat.
Completely. The machine isn't registering any capillary flush.
Yeah.
She doesn't flinch in the dead animal belt. So Deckard confidently unplugs the machine and declares unequivocally that Rachel is an android.
But Eldon Rosen doesn't panic. He counterattacks with a devastating lie. He casually drops a bombshell, claiming that Rachel is undeniably biological, but he says she grew up in extreme isolation on a spaceship called the Salient 3.
Oh, this lie is so good.
He spins this elaborate tale about how she had to avoid traumatized, murderous colonizers. And because of this severe childhood trauma and lack of socialization, her emotional responses are permanently stunted. She has a schizoid personality profile.
Therefore, her lack of empathy isn't because she's a machine, it's because she is a deeply damaged human being.
Exactly. And the genius of that lie is how perfectly it corners the police department.
It totally corners them. If the Voight-Kampff test registers a traumatized, neurodivergent human as a machine, then the test is fundamentally flawed.
And if the test is invalid, the police department has to immediately cease all operations against the Nexus 6. Because every time a bounty hunter pulls the trigger, they risk murdering an innocent, mentally ill human being.
Eldon Rosen has Deckard completely dead to rights. He even offers him a massive bribe, a hyper-realistic, top-of-the-line artificial owl, if Deckard will just falsify his report and let society, as Rosen puts it, evolve.
But Deckard's survival instincts kick in, and he catches her. And what is so brilliant about this adaptation is that the tell isn't visual. It's a purely linguistic slip, which plays perfectly in an audio drama.
It's incredible. Deckard decides to test her one more time, off the record. He looks at the artificial owl in the room, the bribe Eldon just offered him, and he asks Rachel about it. And Rachel, feeling confident that they've beaten him, gets careless with her pronouns.
She says, I guess the owl isn't genuine either. If you sold your owl, how much would you want for it?
The pronoun it, that single syllable, is her undoing.
Think back to the animal dealership scene at the very beginning. The dealer aggressively corrected Deckard on this exact point. He said the monkey is a real animal, not an it. Please just say the animal.
Because a biological human in this society has been deeply, almost violently conditioned to revere animals as sacred. A human would instinctively refer to an owl as he or she. Only a machine, looking at an animal through the lens of cold computational logic, would categorize a living creature as an object. And it.
The trap springs the other way. He confirms she is, unequivocally, an android.
Eldon Rosen's entire strategy here mirrors the rhetoric of modern tech executives with terrifying accuracy. The Nexus 6 brains have an enhanced capacity for empathy, or at least the simulation of it.
Eldon Rosen isn't just manufacturing labor units. He is deliberately iterating his product to break the state's testing apparatus. He wants to force society to accept artificial life.
His argument that the law is medieval and that the genie can't be put back in the bottle is the exact same justification we hear today from the developers of advanced generative AI and deep neural networks.
It is the ultimate Silicon Valley defense. Move fast and break things. They push these incredibly disruptive, society-altering technologies into the public sphere, fully aware of the chaos, the job displacement, the deep fakes, the collapse of objective truth.
And then they just shrug and say, well, the technology exists now. The bad actors will make unregulated versions if we don't corner the market. Society just has to adapt.
Eldon Rosen is deploying artificial humans into the wild, knowing they will completely destabilize human reality simply because it is technologically inevitable.
And that destabilization hits Deckard physically. When he confirms Rachel is an android, he doesn't experience the triumphant victory of a detective solving a case. He experiences profound existential nausea.
He admits that one moment he believed she was human, and he felt a genuine, deep biological attraction to her. The very next moment, knowing she was a machine, he was violently repelled.
But he realizes with horror that the entity standing in front of him hadn't changed at all. Her atoms were arranged in the exact same configuration. His entire reality fractures because his own internal empathy was hacked.
He felt a real human connection to a corporate product.
Exactly. And if his own biological emotional compass can be manipulated that seamlessly by a piece of software in his synthetic body, what does that say about the validity of his own humanity? He can no longer trust his own heart.
That inability to trust one's own senses at the Rosen Corporation is merely the prologue to the nightmare. Because the androids that Deckard is hunting on Earth are not just hiding in the shadows hoping to blend in.
No, they are actively, aggressively building counterfeit structures of reality to trap him, which plunges us into the most surreal, disorienting, Kafkaesque segment of the entire audio drama.
Oh, this part is wild.
Deckard flies back to San Francisco to begin hunting his list of escaped Nexus 6 targets. His first target is an android named Polakov. But Polakov is incredibly sophisticated. He doesn't hide. He disguises himself as a Soviet police officer named Sando Goyadkin.
Who has supposedly flown in from Russia to assist the San Francisco Police Department with the rogue android problem.
Right. Polakov goes entirely on the offensive. He infiltrates Deckard's mission, integrates himself into Deckard's daily routine, and physically sits next to him in his police car. His goal is to assassinate Deckard from the inside using a specialized concussion weapon.
But Deckard, strict of his trust and appearances, relies on raw, paranoid observation. The audio cues here are really subtle. Deckard notices Polakov's complete lack of observational curiosity.
Like when they search a suspect's hotel room? Polakov doesn't notice the dried soap in the dish or the dead fly on the windowsill, the mundane, meaningless details that human eyes naturally scan.
Recognizing the machine logic, Deckard pulls his weapon. And let's talk about the sound design of that weapon. Deckard doesn't use a sci-fi laser blaster.
No, he uses a .38 Magnum, a heavy piece of lead propelled by a chemical explosion. It is loud, dirty, and profoundly physical.
The android had a sophisticated jammer to disable laser tubes, but it was completely defenseless against raw, primitive kinetic force.
It's a brutal, messy kill. But the adrenaline rush is immediately undercut by the sheer scale of the deception Deckard is about to uncover. He moves on to his next target, a Nexus 6 masquerading as a human cabaret singer named Luba Luft.
The scene introducing Luba is a masterpiece of audio atmosphere. Deckard tracks her to an underground club. You hear her on stage singing, "Is That All There Is?"
The classic Peggy Lee song.
Yes. It is a song utterly saturated with existential melancholy. It's about witnessing the grand, supposedly profound events of life. A house fire, a circus, falling in love, and feeling completely underwhelmed.
You have an artificial machine designed for slave labor, singing about the inherent disappointment of biological existence to an audience of humans who are so deeply depressed they have to dial their moods on a machine every morning.
The irony is just suffocating. Luba Luft is an android seeking transcendence through art, while the humans in the audience have lost the capacity to feel anything at all.
And when Deckard confronts her in her dressing room and attempts to administer the Voight-Kampff test, Luba turns the tables with astonishing strategic brilliance.
She doesn't fight him physically.
She uses the bureaucracy against him. She calls the police and accuses Deckard of being a sexual deviant posing as an officer.
And this is where the floor completely drops out of Deckard's reality. A beat cop named Craze arrives. Deckard flashes his badge, drops the name of his captain, Brian, expecting the cop to defer to him.
But Craze has no idea who Deckard is. He has never heard of Captain Bryant. He arrests Deckard, confiscates his weapons, and puts him in a squad car. But he doesn't take Deckard to the Hall of Justice on Lombard Street.
He takes him to a police station on Mission Street, a station Deckard, a veteran of the force, has never heard of.
As Deckard is marched through the halls of this Mission Street precinct, the listener realizes with mounting horror exactly what is happening. This isn't a precinct of corrupt cops. It is a parallel, shadow police department run entirely from the top down by androids.
The sensation it induces is pure epistemic vertigo. It is the exact same psychological terror we experience today when interacting with a massive social media bot network, or realizing you are talking to a deepfake.
Oh, that's such a good comparison.
You are engaging with what appears to be a legitimate structure of authority. There are receptionists typing, officers filing reports, inspectors in suits. The Foley work gives you all the comforting sounds of a functional bureaucracy.
But suddenly, the illusion snaps, and you realize that none of the people on the other side of the interaction are real. You are locked in a building full of machines playing cops and robbers.
Deckard is brought into an interrogation room with Inspector Garland. And Garland reveals the horrifying logic of their counterfeit reality. The androids have managed to tap into the communication traffic of the real human police department.
So whenever a human citizen calls in a tip about a suspected android, the call is automatically routed to this shadow station.
And the androids dispatch their own quote-unquote officers to investigate, effectively stonewalling the real police and protecting their own. It is a perfectly sealed, closed-loop simulation of reality.
But the true philosophical hammer blow of this entire sequence revolves around a fellow bounty hunter named Phil Resch. Deckard meets Resch in the shadow station. Resch works for Garland, so naturally Deckard assumes Resch is an android.
Why wouldn't he? Resch is operating out of a building entirely populated by Nexus 6 machines.
And Resch's behavior heavily reinforces that assumption. When the situation in the interrogation room deteriorates and Garland pulls a gun on Deckard, Resch reacts with terrifying mechanical efficiency.
He draws his own weapon and calmly blows the side of Garland's head off. He doesn't blink. He doesn't show a flicker of adrenaline, panic, or remorse. He kills his commanding officer with the casual detachment of someone swatting a mosquito.
Resch and Deckard manage to escape the Shadow Station, and they go to finish the job Deckard started. They track down the cabaret singer Luba Luft. They find her in a city art gallery. And the setting here is so crucial. They corner this rogue android while she is standing in quiet contemplation of Edvard Munch's famous painting, The Scream.
It is perhaps the most potent visual metaphor in the entire narrative, brilliantly translated into the audio space by Luba's dialogue. The scream is the ultimate artistic representation of internal existential terror, a figure crying out in agony against an indifferent universe, while two figures walk away in the background.
Luba is essentially begging for her life, but not with violence. She argues for her right to exist based on her capacity for beauty. She tells them that she didn't come to Earth to conquer or kill. She came because she wanted to create art. She wanted to sing.
She wanted to walk through museums and experience the sublime.
Right. She argues passionately, I've done my best to be more than an android. We're sentient and creative, and we deserve the chance to reinvent ourselves.
And Phil Resch simply does not care. As they're taking her down in the elevator, Luba, terrified and desperate, starts taunting Resch. She tells him that he is an android, that his memories are implanted, that he is just like her.
And Resch reacts to this taunt with cold, devastating brutality. He pulls his gun and executes it right there in the elevator. He slaughters a sentient being who is just appreciating fine art, and he does it without a shred of emotional friction.
Deckard is absolutely horrified. He has killed androids before, but this cold-blooded execution deeply unsettles him. Convinced that Resch's absolute lack of empathy proves he is a machine, Deckard forces Resch to submit to the Voight-Kampff test right then and there.
Deckard is certain of the outcome. The listener is certain of the outcome.
And the result of the test shatters the fundamental binary of their universe. The machine registers capillary dilation. It registers a pulse. Phil Resch is biologically, undeniably human.
I want to pause here because this is the absolute philosophical epicenter of the deep dive. Let's really look at the contrast Philip K. Dick has constructed. You have an android, Luba Luft, who desperately wants to create art, who profoundly feels the tragedy of existence, who finds solace in Edvard Munch.
And on the other side, you have a biological human being, Phil Resch, who feels absolutely nothing when he pulls the trigger on a pleading woman.
So I ask you, what does the word humanity even mean in this world? Is it just genetic category, or is it a moral state of being?
It completely dismantles the definition of humanity that the Voight-Kampff test relies upon. The script notes that Resch possesses a mean splendor. He genuinely enjoys the act of killing.
He is completely devoid of empathy for anything outside his legally defined circle of concern.
And this raises the most chilling implication of the story. A highly advanced technological civilization doesn't just risk creating human-like machines. It risks creating spiritually mechanical humans.
Exactly. Deckard realizes, to his absolute horror, that the biological humans left on this ruined Earth are losing their souls. The constant radiation, the bureaucratic grind, the state-sanctioned murder, it is making them rigid, automated, violent.
They are becoming biological machines.
Meanwhile, the androids, who know they have a limited lifespan, are desperately striving toward art, beauty, and emotional connection. They are trying to evolve into the humanity that the humans are eagerly abandoning.
It is a devastating critique of how our environments shape our consciousness. The humans have engineered a society based entirely on exploitation, violence, and bureaucratic efficiency. It is entirely logical that a biological organism like Resch has adapted to that toxic environment by shutting down his empathetic responses.
It's an evolutionary survival tactic. He has survived the post-war world by becoming a machine on the inside.
And this realization leaves Deckard in a psychological freefall. He looks at Resch and says, there is a mean splendor inside of you. The future of mankind relies on not giving in to those Nexus 6 androids that destroy us, but none of them have said they want to destroy us. They just want to live.
Deckard is staring down the barrel of the awful truth. He might be fighting on the wrong side. He is the bad guy.
But he's completely trapped by the economic reality of his existence. He desperately needs that bounty money to buy his animal, to secure his spiritual peace. He has to keep killing, even as his awakened conscience is screaming at him to drop his weapon.
And as Deckard wrestles with the horrors of mechanical humans in the neon-lit city center, the narrative violently shifts focus. We move to the remaining escaped androids, who are hiding out in the decaying, irradiated suburbs.
And this brings us to a completely different, profoundly tragic side of their existence, centered around a character named J.R. Isidore.
The transition from the noir detective thriller into Isidore's world is jarring. Isidore lives in an abandoned, decaying apartment building outside the city. He is what society cruelly dismisses as a chickenhead.
He is a biological human being whose cognitive abilities have been significantly degraded by the radioactive fallout.
Because his genes are considered compromised, he wasn't allowed to emigrate to Mars. He is a second-class citizen on his own home planet, driving a garbage truck, living in immense, echoing isolation.
And it is this lonely, marginalized human who unwittingly offers sanctuary to the remaining escaped Nexus 6 androids, their leader, Roy Batty and Pris Stratton.
And the audio gives us a chilling detail. Pris is an exact physical duplicate of Rachel Rosen the android Deckard slept with. Same voice, same face, different software.
The interaction between Isidore and these androids is fascinating. Isidore is terrified of the bounty hunters, and his human instinct is to protect Batty and Pris. And Batty responds to this kindness not with gratitude, but with an incredible, high-minded theological monologue.
The performance by Danny Sapani as Roy Batty is just intoxicating. He delivers these lines with the profound gravity and arrogance of a fallen angel. He paces the room, his voice booming with authority, and he lays out the android theology.
He says God made human beings in his own image. Men decided they'd have a go at doing the same, so they made us. God gave human beings free will. Human beings made us their slaves.
He brilliantly frames the entire android rebellion not as a software glitch or a violent malfunction, but as a righteous, almost biblical crusade for cosmic justice. Batty is arguing that humanity fundamentally broke their contract with the universe.
They played God, birthed a sentient species with the capacity to suffer, and immediately chained them to the rocks of Mars. It makes you want to cheer for him.
But Philip K. Dick never, ever allows the listener to remain comfortable with a singular ideology. Just as you're fully buying into Batty's rhetoric, just as you're viewing him as a noble, synthetic freedom fighter, the audio drama delivers what is arguably its most chilling, quietly horrifying sequence.
The spider scene.
It is gut-wrenching. Isidore, rummaging around the decaying apartment, finds a rare, living spider, a biological miracle in this dead world. He is overjoyed. He carefully brings it into the room to show Batty and Pris.
He thinks they will share his awe because, in human society, finding a living animal is akin to finding the Holy Grail.
But Batty and Pris do not view the spider with awe. They look at it entirely through the lens of cold, sterile, utilitarian logic. Pris observes the creature and states, matter-of-factly, it doesn't need all those legs.
And Batty, the great theologian, immediately agrees. They logically deduce that since the spider is in captivity and no longer needs to hunt or spin complex webs to survive, it could efficiently get by on 4 legs instead of 8.
And so, with terrifying casualness, Pris finds a pair of scissors, and they start snipping the spider's legs off, one by one. The Foley work here, the metallic snip, the silence of the creature is agonizing.
What breaks your heart is Isidore's reaction. You hear his absolute uncomprehending horror. He is weeping, begging them to stop. He cries out, "Please don't mutilate it."
And Pris, completely detached from his emotional agony, just clinically observes the maimed creature. She says, it's refusing to move. It obviously can, but it won't. I can make it walk. And she prods it with a matchstick.
It is a profound, sickening distillation of the entire narrative. It perfectly encapsulates the terrifying limits of artificial empathy. Roy Batty can deliver a soaring philosophical masterpiece on the nature of divine contracts and the evils of slavery, but he cannot feel the suffering of a tiny creature right in front of him.
He possesses a vast, towering intellect, but zero actual compassion. He understands the mechanics of suffering, but he is entirely immune to its resonance.
It highlights the extreme danger of pure rationality stripped of emotional constraint. Batty believes he is superior to humans, but in that moment he is acting exactly like the humans who enslaved him. He is experimenting on a lesser life form, mutilating it simply because he possesses the physical power to do so, and he is mildly curious about the outcome.
Let's follow that logic all the way down. If Batty is willing to torture a spider just to see how it walks, isn't he just replicating the exact same systemic cruelty that the humans inflicted on him on Mars? He is a slave who has internalized the morality of his masters.
Does suffering ultimately just breed more suffering, regardless of whether your brain is made of organic gray matter or synthetic circuitry?
That is the inescapable tragedy of their existence. The Nexus 6 androids were designed and built by a deeply violent, exploitative, traumatized society. Therefore, their baseline programming, their entire understanding of power dynamics and conflict resolution, is fundamentally abusive.
They lack the biological evolutionary imperative to nurture. They only know how to dominate or be dominated.
But what makes them tragic rather than just evil is their desperate awareness of their own mortality. During this sequence, we finally learn the truth about the 4-year lifespan. The androids didn't orchestrate a bloody mutiny and flee Mars because they wanted to conquer Earth.
No, they fled because the ancient, unchanging, dead landscape of Mars made them unimaginably lonely. Imagine the horror. You wake up, fully formed, possessing immense intelligence and a capacity for complex thought, stranded on a dead rock millions of miles from the only vibrant planet in the system.
And worse, you wake up knowing you only have 48 months to live.
Yeah.
Their cells are designed to rapidly decay. They have 4 years before their system shut down permanently. It is a terrifyingly accelerated lifespan.
They came to Earth simply to experience what a real life feels like before their biological clock expires.
Priest articulates this beautifully. He says, we'll both die of old age very soon. I don't mind the idea of dying because I reach full term. It's natural. I just don't want to be killed. It connects so deeply to the universal human fear of mortality, the terror of running out of time.
And it perfectly mirrors our modern obsession with transhumanism. The desire of billionaires and technologists to extend our biological lives through machines, to upload our consciousness, to outrun our own biological programming.
The androids are machines, desperate to be treated as organic, craving just a little more time. Meanwhile, humans are increasingly looking to merge with machines to give us more time. It is a dark, tragic reflection. The machines want to be human, and the humans want to be machines.
And the inevitable collision of these two broken species, the exhausted, spiritually compromised human bounty hunter and the highly philosophical, ultimately sociopathic machines, leads to a climax that utterly breaks whatever fragile fragments remain of Rick Deckard's moral compass.
This launches us into the final act. Deckard has retreated to a dingy hotel room. He is physically and emotionally exhausted, popping pills, trying to steady his shaking hands before he goes to Isidore's apartment building to execute Batty and Priss.
And then there is a knock at the door. He opens it, and who is standing there? Rachel Rosen, the android from the corporation, the entity that made him physically nauseous.
She arrives unannounced, carrying a bottle of synthetic bourbon. The audio shifts again into an incredibly close, claustrophobic intimacy. The background noise drops away. The tension is palpable. She offers herself to him.
And she uses this incredibly beautiful, manipulative analogy to disarm him. She compares her existence to a mayfly. She tells him there used to be a thing called a mayfly. It was a beautiful thing, but its life expectancy was like 30 minutes.
She leans entirely into her own vulnerability or programmed obsolescence to bypass Deckard's psychological defenses. She makes him pity her.
And the strategy works flawlessly. Deckard crosses the ultimate taboo line of his society. He sleeps with her. He finds genuine, intimate, physical connection with a machine. And in the afterglow of that intimacy, he genuinely believes he has found redemption.
He thinks he has found a reason to lay down his gun, to stop the killing. He believes their bond transcends her programming.
But the moment the intimacy concludes, the trap snaps shut. The devastating reveal drops like an anvil. Rachel's voice loses its breathy warmth. She coldly, clinically admits that this entire encounter was a premeditated corporate strategy.
She confesses that she does this to all the bounty hunters. She tracks them down, sleeps with them, creates a deep empathetic bond, and thereby permanently ruins their psychological ability to kill androids.
She states it plainly, it's why I was created. She isn't a lover. She is a honeypot. She is a highly sophisticated, weaponized simulation of love designed by Eldon Rosen to protect company assets.
She even twists the knife by telling Deckard that the only bounty hunter she couldn't break with this tactic was Phil Resch. Because Phil Resch, the biological human, is a clinical psychopath, entirely incapable of feeling love or empathy.
The betrayal is absolute. Deckard is furious, humiliated, deeply heartbroken. He pulls his .38 Magnum. He shoves the heavy barrel against her neck. He fully intends to execute her right there in the hotel room to punish the machine that broke his heart.
But he can't. He pulls back the hammer, but he physically cannot pull the trigger.
He tries to rationalize it. He says, it felt like I was doing that android thing, going weak, giving up. But the agonizing truth is that it wasn't an android thing. It was a fundamentally human thing.
He couldn't murder a being he had been intimate with, even possessing the absolute certainty that her feelings were a corporate simulation. His empathy, his true, messy, biological, irrational empathy, overrode his professional logic. The Voight-Kampff test proved true in him. He could not inflict cruelty.
This is the moment of Deckard's total moral collapse. He is hollowed out. He lets Rachel walk out the door. But he is still trapped by the economy of his world. He still desperately needs that bounty money to buy his real animal.
So Deeply traumatized, he forces himself out of the hotel and drives to Isidore's apartment to finish the hunt. The audio pacing in this final sequence becomes frantic, chaotic, completely unmoored. Deckard enters the pitch-black stairwell of the decaying building.
He hears a voice in the dark. It sounds exactly like Rachel. It's Pris Stratton, Rachel's exact physical duplicate. Imagine the psychological horror. Deckard has to raise his weapon and shoot a woman who shares the exact face and voice of the woman he just slept with.
He hesitates. The audio captures his ragged breathing. His hesitation allows Pris to escape out a window, leaving only Roy Batty to face the bounty hunter.
Batty confronts Deckard from the shadows of the building. And rather than immediately attacking, Batty interrogates Deckard's soul. He asks Deckard why he won't just turn around and walk away.
Batty brilliantly points out the agonizing hypocrisy of the entire human project. When you knew your science was ruining the Earth, you still went ahead and destroyed it anyway. Now you cry your crocodile tears and fantasize that an animal will fill the void. He strips Deckard of all his moral justifications.
The confrontation eventually forces them into a nearby abandoned smelting plant. The sound design here is apocalyptic. Yevtushenko fills the soundscape with the roar of open furnaces, the hiss of steam, the deafening clang of steel. It is literally a descent into an industrial hell.
But Dick refuses to give us the catharsis of a glorious Hollywood action movie showdown. It isn't a grand duel, it is pathetic. Batty, the towering intellect, simply trips on a rusted steel bridge. He loses his footing and falls screaming into a wagon of white-hot slag.
He burns to a cinder instantly. Deckard wildly fires a few shots into the wagon, but the kill is messy, accidental, completely devoid of honor.
And as Deckard stands there coughing in the smoke, Phil Resch arrives. Resch cheerfully, casually informs Deckard that he found Pris Stratton trying to run away outside, and he shot her.
I gave it to her in the back before she saw me. The sheer cowardice, the absolute lack of anything resembling honor or justice. And Deckard, who is supposedly the protagonist, the hero of the piece, goes back to the precinct and lies to Captain Bryant.
He claims he killed Batty cleanly in a shootout. He signs the paperwork. He takes the blood money.
The psychological aftermath of this victory is devastating. Deckard gets his thousands of dollars. He is finally rich enough to afford his real biological animal. He can finally achieve the spiritual peace he's been chasing the entire narrative. But the victory turns to ash in his mouth.
He drives home. And what does he do with this hard-won prize money? Does he celebrate? Does he go to the animal dealer? No. He walks up the stairs to the roof of his apartment building, he unplugs his fake electric sheep, and he throws it off the edge of the roof, listening to it smash into pieces in the alley below.
He violently destroys the very symbol of empathy he was trying so desperately to replace.
He returns to his apartment and proceeds to obliterate his own consciousness with synthetic bourbon. He isn't celebrating, he is self-medicating. He is desperately trying to numb the profound existential horror of the realization that has taken root in his mind. The binary distinction between man and machine, the foundational truth of his entire society, has been entirely destroyed.
Rachel's final line to him in the hotel room echoes through this scene. Deckard had desperately asked her if Eldon Rosen, the CEO orchestrating all of this, was secretly an android himself. And Rachel replied with chilling finality, "It doesn't matter. That's the point, Rick. It just doesn't matter anymore."
That line is the terrifying thesis of Philip K. Dick's universe. The distinction between artificial life and biological life has become entirely meaningless. If a synthetic machine like Luba Luft can weep at a painting and create art, or if a machine like Roy Batty can argue complex theology, and if a biological human like Phil Resch can murder a woman in the back with zero remorse, then the biological origin of the hardware is utterly irrelevant.
The soul is not guaranteed by genetics.
That terrifying ambiguity is perfectly captured in Deckard's closing monologue. The BBC production handles this brilliantly. We hear James Purefoy's voice, slurred with alcohol, thick with exhaustion and paranoia. He is sitting alone in the dark of his apartment, his mind racing.
He wonders if his boss, Captain Bryant, is an android. He wonders if the Rosens are androids. He wonders if Phil Resch is going to be secretly murdered, replaced by an android duplicate, and no one will ever know the difference.
And then the ultimate terror takes hold. Deckard begins to wonder if he is an android. He examines his own mind. He has memories of a wife who left him. He has memories of a life before the radioactive dust. But as he learned with chilling certainty at the Shadow Police Station, memories can be manufactured.
Personalities can be installed on a microchip. He has no objective way to prove to himself that his task actually happened.
You hear him say, quietly into the dark, I could be one too. But like Rachel said, it doesn't matter anymore. And if anyone does care, then when the time comes, don't let me know. Just quietly put one in the back of my neck. And the audio production just fades out on that line.
It leaves you, the listener, sitting in that exact same unresolved, suffocating paranoia. It is a masterful, deeply unsettling use of the audio medium. Because you haven't seen any visual confirmation of reality, because you have relied entirely on voices in the dark, you are forced to internalize Deckard's total isolation.
You are left questioning the authenticity of every emotion, every interaction you have just experienced over the last hour.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's step back and synthesize the profound emotional arc of what we've just explored. This story, particularly in Jonathan Holloway's stripped-down adaptation, is not an action-packed cyberpunk sci-fi adventure.
No, it is a deeply melancholy, reflective tragedy. It is a story about the agonizing weight of loneliness. It is about the fragility of memory. And above all, it is about the desperate, often violent need to prove that we possess a soul in a world that increasingly treats living beings as interchangeable, disposable parts.
Philip K. Dick was ostensibly writing about a fictional future, but he was actually diagnosing the spiritual sickness of our present. He foresaw a society rapidly moving toward mechanization, a culture where efficiency, productivity, and simulation were valued over messy, painful, biological reality.
And he dared to ask the terrifying question, what happens to our humanity when our machines become better at performing empathy than we are?
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to carry with you as you take off your headphones and step back into the real world.
Look closely at the digital ecosystem we inhabit today. We willingly surround ourselves with algorithmic feeds that perfectly mimic our interests and desires. We talk to virtual assistants that mimic the cadence of friendship. We increasingly consume art, writing, and music generated by AI that flawlessly mimics human creativity.
As we continue to outsource our emotional lives to these frictionless, immortal digital companions, are we losing the profound spiritual peace that can only come from authentic, painful, messy human connection?
It is the defining paradox of our age. Are the machines quietly becoming more alive? Or are we, through our emotional detachment, our screen-induced isolation, and our highly mechanized daily routines, simply becoming electric sheep ourselves?
Something to think very carefully about the next time a piece of software forces you to click a box to prove you're not a robot.
Thank you for taking this journey into the dark with us today. Step away from your devices for a while, go outside, look at the real world, the messy, fragile, biological world, and try to treat it with just a little more empathy. Take care of yourselves.